Kathy here from Eclectic Images, and thank you for joining me. Today I'm going to create a scene like I often do, but I'm going to shake it up a bit with the way I present it, and that's the technique I want to be looking at, and that's encouraging you to look at what you're making in a slightly different way. Can you turn a picture into a construction card? Can you layer it in a different way? So just looking at what different techniques we can use to present our card. So we might be still using the same colouring techniques and the same stamps that we've used before, but by presenting it a different way, it gives you a whole new world of things to play with. Okay, so our stamps today is the Dylis the duck, and I'm just using a couple of the smaller birds out of this one. We've got our Bulrushes set, and I'll be using several out of this set. The grass set, I'm just going to pick out these small ones. It's a really useful stamp. Inks wise, I'm going to be using Versafine, Clair, Nocturne for some basic stamping, plus Seaglass and Cove blue as part of creating our scene. We're also going to sneak in our Eclectic Images circle stencil because I just love working with this. And for our main colouring, we're going to be using Shimmer dusts. Now, Shimmer dusts are a pigment powder. They come in a little pot like this, which I find a little bit messy for me to work with. I tend to get too much powder everywhere. So what I do is I use a little funnel, which you'll find these and the little bottles on the website. Use the funnel to actually decant some of the powder and a little spatula to decant powder into these small bottles, because I find the shaker bottles much easier to work with. Okay, so we've got colours here today. We've got pink ice, touch of sunflower, Peacock and Cobalt. And I'm going to use, I want to create a moon, and I'm going to use my stencil for that. When I grab my stencil, and we're going to put in a work pad, scratch pad, but I'm just going to tuck it underneath. I'm going to tuck a magnetic mat underneath my scratch pad. This way I can still use the scratch pad for blending things onto, but I can use some magnets for helping to hold everything down. So let's tuck that in there. Make sure it hasn't got lots in the way. Place our card on top. Now the card I have measured carefully for what I want to do with it today. So our base card is a 14 by 14 white folded, 300 GSM white folded card. And then I've created a 12 by 12. And I don't think I've got my cut out bit of paper here. I actually created a 10 by 10 piece and cut it into 4 and the 12 by 12 and positioned them onto my base card to see which size worked best. So I actually did a little bit of a mock-up just to make sure that my sizing was going to work before I cut these out. Okay, so we've got our stencil here. I'm going to put the stencil on there and just shake a little bit of the pink ice and the sunflower through that shape there. And we'll get a touch of sunflower, which looks orange in the bottle, but it comes out yellow. And I only want a little bit. Come on, give me a bit more than that. Okay, a little bit. Right, that is plenty. Now we'll take this out of the way. Actually, you know what I'm going to do is spray that. Get that piece done. So give it a little spray. Let it move a bit. And we'll just use our paper towel to knock it back a little bit. And that gives us some basic patterning on our moon. Okay. Now we can either mask that, or we can just be a little bit careful where we put our other shimmer dust. But as anyone who knows, who's worked with shimmer dust, it's a little bit hard to be careful with them. So let's just give it a quick dry with the heat gun. Then we're going to place the reverse. So with the stencil, the circle stencil set, you get the stencil and then you get all the mask pieces as well. And I use both quite a lot. So let's place that on there and then pop a magnet on. So that's going to hold it in place for us. Now we're going to put the peacock down below where we actually want to have some water texture. And we'll put some Cobalt in the sky. Now I'm happy to have a little bit of a halo around where the moon is, so I'm going to put my Cobalt more around the edges. Rightio. Now we give that a spray. Now I'm not going to manipulate it at all, I'm just going to use the water on it and let that do all the moving. Okay, now we lift this out and put our paper towel on and blot a lot of that back. We want a lot, I know it looks fabulous, but I want it a lot softer than that. Let's carefully pull that out. And we've got some smearing, but look, that's okay because this is shimmer dust, and shimmer dusts are always a little bit random, and it will work out just fine, you'll see. Bear with me, it will be good. Well, we hope so anyway, don't we? Okay, a little bit more of a dry. Now I will just turn to a fresh page in the scratch pad, so that means moving my magnetic mat as well. Okay, so again, we're just going to tuck that in underneath. That feels better. I'll just run that through my hands a bit just to smooth it out a little bit. So now we can come in with some inks and define that a little bit more. So to do this, we're again going to mask the moon. And at first I'll hold it in place because I want to put a little bit of colour all the way around it. But I am actually going to mask off where the sea is going to go, the pond. Okay, now to do this, to get that the right way round, I can actually pop it on my mat here, line the card up with some of those lines, those grid lines, and then see how uneven I am there? That would make my horizon line look really wacky. So if I just maneuver that until I've got that straight, then my horizon line is going to be straight. So I'll grab a little bit of my tape. Let's just hold all that down again, make sure it hasn't shifted. So we're lining that up with one edge of my grid. We're lining this up with another line on the grid, making sure it's all nice and straight. And then I can pop a bit of tape down there to hold it on. Doesn't matter if it's a bit lumpy because we're not colouring that part of it at the moment. Okay, now we can place that on. Place our little mask on here and start using some Cove blue and a brush to shade around that. So I've got my number 10 brush here. Pick up a bit of ink. I can tap it on my scratch pad if I just want to make sure I haven't got too much, and also start on the stencil and work out from that. And that also makes sure that I don't have blobs of ink coming off. Now I could place a magnet on here, and often I do, but it does mean that I've got to work around the fact that the magnet's not much difference in size than the moon. So instead this time I'm just going to hold it in place, tap off, make sure I'm holding that in the same spot. Let's go up this side. A little bit up the other side. Cool. Okay, now let's do some more work on the sky while we're here. We're going to shade around that as well. I'll just give my little mask bit a wipe. So we're going to add some of the Cove blue just around the edges here. So where I want it stronger, I'll do a smudge. Where I want it a bit softer, I'll do some circles. So I'm colouring it, but I want to leave that little bit of a halo around the moon there that we've managed to create by putting the shimmer dust just where we wanted them. Haha, look at this smear in here. Never works out just where you want it with shimmer dust. It's always a little bit random. That is the joy of it. Across the top. Now, even though I've got my mat held down by the magnets and stuff, it says me it hasn't actually put a magnet on yet, have I? Because I taped it. So I can actually move my card around a bit. Or if I was using magnets to help hold things in place, so if we wanted to just put a mask on here to protect it from any other colour, if I've got my mask there, I can move my whole pad around so that I'm still working at what is a good angle for me. I never want to get to the point where I'm working sort of back to front because I'll just get blobs of ink on. Now let's ease that blue into the card a little bit. We want the glow to be just here, so we want sky colour around the whole rest of it. Just check your own fingers every now and again to make sure you haven't stuck them in any wet ink. Okay. That is looking pretty nice. We might put a little bit more down this edge just to even it up to the other edge. Okay, now let's switch to the water, our pond. So we won't need the mask for this bit, and I can take that tape off the back because we now have a line to match to. So when I turn my card over to do the water, I can just line up with that edge that's already there, and we can pop a couple of magnets on just to hold that all in place for us. Okay, so this time I'm going to switch to the Seaglass. And actually, before we shade the edge, I'm just going to get my water brush and double check if I've got, see where I've already got some colour on the mask there, I can make sure that I actually line up that with where my moon is. If I hadn't already been colouring the card, using this mask on another card, and so got that, I could actually mark with pencil about where my moon is, just so I know I want to leave a little bit of lighter patches through there and add darker to the outer part of the pond, so we get a little bit of light reflection coming off the pond, and actually looks like our light's travelling that way. Well, let's just come in with our brush and add a few little swirls of water. So I'm just going to put a little bit on and then just use my wet brush just to move it around a little bit. So pop a bit of colour on. I'm trying to avoid those white bits. And then use the brush to soften that out. So we've got water texture, but not really solid lines. And just a little bit down the bottom there. Okay. Now I do want to do some shading around that with the Seaglass, but I might switch to something else for a minute to give that chance to dry. So let's take those bits off, and we'll stamp our little ducks in there. So small acrylic block, and I'll show you another sample that I did before with two different ducks. Now I'm going to be cutting this in half. So I want my ducks to go on one half of the card or the other. So I'm going to pop him up nice and high. I love these ones with their little crazy feet sticking out in all directions. I don't know how close. Oh, yeah, Lawrence is nice and close. You can see their little funny duck feet. They're just so cute. And there's 3 different ones in the set. Now this little fella's just taking off. I love them. Okay, now let's turn this card around again and do our shading along the bottom. So we're going to pop in that mask. Drop a couple of magnets on to help hold it. Pick up our brush and our Seaglass ink. So circles where you want it softer, or lean it over and smudge it where you want it a bit stronger. If you need to change your angle, just move your card around, your scratch pad around a bit. Okay, on the lower edge. I believe we've got a little bit of rain happening out there after Victoria has been, like many other areas of Australia, sweltering lately. To have a little bit of rain is quite nice. Let's move that around. So again, adding lots of ink where we want it. A little bit of shading on. A bit of circles if we want it, or push the brush down and just inch some bits of ink in there. Whoop, sounds like we've got a little grandson back. Hello little Teddy, we have helpers today. Lawrence is my cameraman, and we have our little grandson Teddy helping along a bit as well. Which I don't mind because he's very cute. But yes, if you hear some strange noises, it's probably Teddy playing with stuff in the background and giving us very cheeky smiles. Okay, let's move that out of there and you can start to see how our little pond scene is coming together. Now, if I was wanting that to be the ocean, I could leave it like that. But if I want it to look like a pond, if I put some grass on the other side of it, it'll define the edge of it and make it look more like a pond. So with a bit of Seaglass ink, I'm going to add in this other side of the water. So instantly you can see that is not the ocean anymore. We've given it that far edge. This is where this little stamp is so useful. But now I'll come in with some black to do our bulrushes. Okay, so I'm going to get, I want to use a little bit of this one, the one that looks like it's blowing in the wind a bit. This one here, which often I don't use, but it's really pretty, so I'm going to give it a go on this one. So let's ink it up with our Versafine Clair Nocturne. So yeah, just a few of the reeds, the fine ones, just blowing in the breeze there. Then we'll change to the long ones. And we might bring that in on this other side. So again, ink up with Nocturne, and then we'll see if it needs any more. It might not. We could always add some willow in the top of this card. I don't think I will on this one, but it would look good. Okay, let's bring that in. I don't want to cover our little duck too much. But by not wanting to cover him too much, I've actually gone a bit high, and so I've got the bottom of the stamp there showing, which I don't like that. So what I'm going to do is just clean that stamp off. If we clean the whole stamp really well, I might be able to just ink a little bit of it and add a bit more into there and cover it. If I can't cover it, I would simply cut it off. But let's just see if I can just cover that bit up. So actually I'm going to pin this down without some of our magnets so that it sits better. Now it's not perfect, but it does just fill in that bit of a gap. Okay, now let's grab the smaller bulrushes. And we'll add some on this side. Now I think we're not 100% happy with that. We will pop a few in, just sort of covering that bit up a bit. So suddenly that bit's not standing out as much. And we'll even add a few more in here. So now that's starting to look like it's a big bunch of reeds rather than a black line. It is amazing how sometimes just an extra bit of stamping can actually cover up something that you might initially think was a bit of a mistake. So I'm just spritzing my microfiber cloth and giving my stamp a wipe. Okay, so that's all we're going to do with the stamping. So I'll pop all that to one side. We'll give it a quick heat set just to make sure that black ink is dry. So it's quite a different look with using the shimmer dust to create our sky and our water, or it could have been that with a different scene, it could have been grass. So just using the shimmer dust and a bit more of a random look rather than actually painting your scene can be quite effective as well. Now, I'm just going to ask for Lawrence to please pass over the little guillotine that I left on the other table. So we've got our base card, which as I said is a 14 by 14 base card, and then I've cut this to 12 by 12. Thank you, Lawrence. I've also popped in, this is where I was doing my test piece, I've popped this in to see where that, so I measured it to 6 centimetres, and of course the gauge on this is in inches. So I've measured it, so a 2 3/4 will give me the equivalent of 6 centimetres. So this is very difficult to do. But we're just going to pop that in there. I can have a look at my little bit of test paper and just see if it looks like I'm in about the right spot, and I am. And we'll just cut it. How scary is that? 2 3/4. Now pushing it right up against there so it can't move. Cut. And we've cut one of our little ducks in half. 2 3/4 and cut. Okay, now we're going to double-sided tape all those and stick them onto our base card. So before I do it, I will lay them on and just check how big my borders are going to be so that I know when I take the first one that the whole layout is going to work. So I want about the same border there as what I get in between. So we're looking at positioning our pieces about there. All right, let's start sticking down. So I'll grab some double-sided tape. Some right here, and do it square by square. I have to remember not to drop my little acrylic block onto the glass mat because it always makes such a big noise when you're watching the video back. Okay, pull that off. Now, oh, we've got some extra singing happening in the background. I think Teddy's going to be a singer. Or a dinosaur, we're not quite sure yet. Okay, so looking at how much borders I want, I'm going to get that nice and even there, making sure I've got the same that side and I'm nice and square. And as we work around, our picture will start to become a picture again. It is very hard to do the bit where you chop your picture up, especially when I thought, I'll be careful how I position the ducks so that I don't have to chop them and then had to cut one in half anyway. That was a bit tough to do. Tried to put it off the mat and then flicked it on and still made a big bang. I'm so sorry, guys. Okay, I just find it very easy to use the little block to actually break off the tape and get a nice even break to the tape, rather than when you tear it you tend to get an uneven end, so sometimes you're not getting tape right to the edges where you want them. And I often find when I'm demonstrating or teaching that or doing a video or something like this, that using scissors is very neat, but it takes me too long. So using the little block, I can cut it quite quick, can tear the tape quite quickly, because it is important that you're watching interesting stuff and not me spending ages putting on my tape. Okay, let's lay this one in so it gets similar borders. Now I want you to have a think about with something like this. What have you got? I'll show you another sample in a moment, but I want you to think about, what have I got that I could use to create shapes out of my scenes? So here I just cut the squares, but you could use a circle or an oval die cut, a die to cut them. I think if I used a circle or a frame die, I might say, like, because you circle dies, you have multiple circles, I might leave one blank and use the next two bits or something like that. I might have to try one of those and do a sample, put a sample up on the Facebook page for you to have a look at. I think a circle one would be very interesting. And an oval one. An oval would work really well as well. Now with the test one that I did, I actually cut that vertically, and the guillotine slipped as I was doing one of the cuts, and I thought, oh no, I've wrecked it. And then I decided, I'll show it to you in a minute, then I decided that I was going to go with it anyway, because it just makes it more interesting. Of course, if you're nervous about getting these all straight, you could put in some light pencil lines first, or actually pin your card down on your mat so that you're lining your pieces up with lines on your grid lines there. Still got the singing. Okay, nearly there. It's also looking at products in a little bit of a different way too, because shimmer dust we normally, we've used it for a background here, but with using them for a scene is different. Normally I use shimmer dust more for random backgrounds, so it's quite challenging to use it for a scene and see what you get from it. It's a little bit like when we do put the shimmer dust on our mat and smoosh a card through them to get a background, but because I wanted this one with the moon as well, I wanted to be a bit more precise where I put them. So that's another way, looking at a product we've got, like shimmer dust, and what's a different way of using them, what's changing it up a little bit. And there's our last piece. So there's our card looking like, well, it looks like a window, doesn't it? I'm going to bring this one forward onto the black so you can see it a little bit better. So that just takes that scene but gives it that little element of interest by making it into a window. Now I'll just bring in the other sample that I did where I cut them vertically, and you can see one cut's not straight And it doesn't matter at all. It just makes it, I feel, more interesting. So don't always stress about things having to be perfect, because sometimes it works out just fine anyway. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you'll have a look at what you can do with some of your scenes, chopping them up in different ways, and see what you make. Or try a construction card with one of them and see how you go. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time.